He was unaware that the woman was a Navy SEAL when he attempted to intimidate her at the gym. The room was stunned by what transpired next. The typical mayhem of an after-work crowd filled Phoenix's Midtown Fitness Center. Sneakers squeaking on the rubberized floor, machines clanged, and music pounded softly in the background. Kendra, a 34-year-old black lady who was focused and confident, was one of the gym patrons. She performed pull-ups, burpees, and deadlifts with precision. She never drew attention to herself, didn't linger, and didn't chat much. It was the same today. Simple black leggings and a tank top were Kendra's go-to gym outfit, and she was wearing headphones, a subliminal indication that she wasn't there to engage in small conversation. A man came up to her while she was rearranging the weights on the squat rack. Like a thundercloud, he loomed uninvitedly. He was broad-shouldered, in his mid-40s, and obviously very much a gym-goer. However, there was a strange quality about him. She instantly straightened her posture at the way he grinned when she saw him. He remarked, "You're using that wrong," in a condescending tone. Kendra removed one earpiece and arched an eyebrow. She said, "Excuse me?" calmly. "The weights," he said, making wide motions. "You're not setting them up right. You could hurt yourself." Kendra smiled modestly and courteously. "Thanks, but I've got it." He did not, however, depart. Instead, as if claiming ownership of the apparatus, he crossed his arms and positioned himself firmly next to her. He went on to say, "I've been coming here for years. Let me show you the proper form." "No need," Kendra stated firmly as she turned to her barbell and replaced the earphone. A frown took the place of the man's smiling. Something that Kendra could sense in the air but didn't hear him say was murmured beneath his breath. A few individuals in the vicinity looked over, seeing the tension, but nobody stepped in. It was one of those times when individuals tell themselves that they have no business getting involved. Kendra kept working out, moving with ease and control. However, the man remained nearby, observing her with a mixture of annoyance and incredulity. He seemed to find an excuse to follow her every time she changed the exercises, murmuring criticisms that she chose to ignore. Then it took place. When he talked loud enough for everyone to hear, Kendra walked to the bench press and adjusted the weights. "Women like you think they know everything, huh?" She stopped in her tracks. She turned to him slowly, her eyes burning but her face composed. "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" The clatter of weights and the murmur of talk seemed to have subsided a bit, and the room became quieter. A few heads turned, interested but reluctant to participate. Clearly encouraged by the attention, the man shrugged. "I'm just saying, maybe you should stick to what you're good at." Kendra refused to fall for it. Rather, she regarded him thoughtfully for a long moment before coolly going back to her exercise. Now, however, the air was charged. The sand was marked with an invisible line, and someone would eventually cross it. The man held onto it. His sour and caustic comments lingered in the air, adding to the uneasiness in the room. Like a burden of its own, Kendra could feel his eyes on her. Ignoring the building tension, she finished her performance and went to the water fountain. Even though it was just a few feet away, she had ample time to consider the circumstances. He was one of the cocky, insecure, and thirsty for control males she had seen before. She didn't feel threatened. She had learned to remain composed under pressure through years of training and discipline, but it didn't mean she didn't sense the tension building. The man followed Kendra as she grabbed for her water bottle. His mouth was clenched in outrage as he leaned against the wall with his arms folded. "Hey," he yelled. "I'm talking to you." Kendra hesitated, her hands tightening around the bottle, but she avoided his gaze. Rather, with methodical motions, she took a drink and replaced the cap. She knew better than to make things worse, yet the room seemed to hold its breath. "Look," he said, his tone brimming with snobbery. "You don't have to act all tough. If you're struggling, just say so. I can help." Kendra now turned to speak to him in a cold, measured tone. "Struggling? The only thing I'm struggling with is your inability to leave me alone." A couple of the gym patrons looked over, noticing the change in her voice. Some stopped working out completely, their countenance showing the weight of unanswered questions. Would he retreat? Would she overlook it? There was a shrill, humorless quality to the man's laughter. With a snap, he stepped closer and said, "You think you're better than me? What makes you so special?" Kendra's voice remained calm despite her narrowed gaze. "Nothing makes me special. But I know how to handle myself. Do you?" It was as if something touched a nerve. His words fell into a low, menacing tone as his features darkened and he moved closer. "You better watch your mouth." There was now a noticeable tension in the room. Individuals were no longer feigning inattention. As if he was unsure whether to step in, a young man on a treadmill paused, looking at Kendra and then back at the man. Kendra, however, met his gaze and shook her head slightly. Right now, she didn't need someone to jump in. The man wasn't only upset, though. Everyone in the room sensed that he was falling apart and that the situation was perilous. The man's hands clenched at his sides as his rage bubbled over. He moved closer, now encroaching on Kendra's private area. She didn't recoil. Rather, she stood up straight. Her steady, unflinching gaze met his. It was exact control, not disobedience. An unspoken declaration that she was not scared. His voice might reverberate off the gym walls as he spat, "You've got a smart mouth, don't you?" The atmosphere was tense by now. Unsure whether to intervene, a few gym staff talked to one another behind the counter. Some remained still, trapped in the uncomfortable paralysis of wanting to assist but not knowing how. Kendra inhaled and exhaled gently. Her words, "You need to calm down," were forceful. She spoke with authority, not rage. It was not a recommendation. However, her remarks simply served to pique his interest further. He extended his arm and aggressively grasped her arm. Throughout the gym, there were gasps. At first, Kendra remained still, her body unnaturally calm, as though she was assessing the scene. His hands tightened as he hissed, "What are you going to do about it?" Huh? Everything changed at that point. The man didn't even realize what was occurring since Kendra was moving so fast. Her free hand went to her side and firmly grasped his wrist. She moved quickly and fluently, twisting his arm till he had to let her go. His face twisted in astonishment and agony at the abrupt reversal of power. She spoke as she took a step back, out of reach but completely within control. Through the astonished hush of the gym, she began, "Let me make one thing clear," in a calm, pointed voice. "You don't put your hands on me. Ever." The man's confidence was clearly eroding as he staggered back, gripping his wrist. However, he roared in frustration and rushed at her rather than backing off. Kendra didn't hold back this time. Using his momentum against him, she easily avoided his awkward strike. She swept his legs out from under him in one fluid motion, causing him to fall loudly on the mat. Chaos broke out in the gym. While some yelled, others hurried to clear the area, and several took out their phones to capture the action. As Kendra stood over him, her posture firm and unflinching, the guy moaned, stunned and ashamed. She whispered, "You really don't know when to quit," so that only he could hear. He briefly appeared to think about trying again, but the expression in her eyes stopped him in his tracks. She was more than just self-assured. She had received training. Risky. The dread in his eyes spoke louder than words, but the revelation came too late. However, the damage had already been done, and the entire gym had now witnessed his aggressive behavior as well as his humiliating loss, at the hands of someone he had misjudged. Now the gym was alive with the click of recording phones and the quiet murmur of whispers. Kendra looked around the room, breathing steadily and standing erect. She exuded a composed yet authoritative demeanor, perhaps daring others to defy her. Still sprawled on the mat, the man stumbled to his feet, uncertainty, guilt, and rage mingling in his face. Like an animal in a corner, he yelled, "You're crazy," and pointed at her. "You think you can just..." "Enough," Kendra interrupted, her voice cutting like a dagger through his speech. "You've embarrassed yourself enough for one day. Leave." Finally, a young woman with big eyes and shaking hands, a gym employee, came forward. "Sir," she murmured in a faltering voice, "you must leave immediately." The man's jaw tensed, and it appeared for a second that he may object. However, it appeared as though the weight of the looks from everyone around him, some disapproving, others angry, sank in. He mumbled something incomprehensible and backed away, his shoulders slumping. He stormed out, pushing the glass door open so forcefully that it rattled, and snatched his luggage off a nearby bench. The room appeared to release a collective breath as the door shut behind him. There was a clap. Then another. Until a little cheer went over the audience. Kendra gestured for silence with a raised hand. "It's over," was all she said. The group started to thin down, with some going back to their exercises and others continuing to whisper and look in her direction. With his phone still in hand, a young man warily walked toward her. He remarked, "That was incredible," in an awe-filled voice. "Are you, like, some kind of martial artist or something?" Kendra smiled slightly at him, but her eyes were still grave. She answered, "Something like that," without providing any details. A middle-aged woman who was also a gym-goer came forward. "Are you okay?" "That was terrifying to watch," Kendra said. "I'm fine," in a composed yet forceful tone. "Thank you for asking." The young woman behind the counter reappeared, trembling as she wrung her hands. "Ma'am, "I'm so sorry. I should have stepped in sooner. I just didn't know," Kendra cut in. "You did what you could," her face softening. Not everyone knows how to handle situations like that. The worker nodded, still wearing a nervous expression. "We should call the police, though. He might come back." Kendra gave this some thought. "No need," she eventually responded. "He's not coming back. Trust me." Her voice was so confident that it was impossible to doubt it. She turned and went to get her belongings in the locker room. However, when she left, the whispers persisted and the gravity of the situation hung in the air, forcing everyone to think for themselves. Kendra entered the locker room with deliberate, well-paced steps. She noticed a collected, serene face smiling back at her in the mirror as she grabbed for her exercise bag. There was no sign of gloating, no victory on her face. There was no need to prove anything to anyone. Making a statement was the goal. Respect is a must. Silently, allowing the adrenaline to subside, she packed her belongings. The young woman from the front desk warily walked in as she was zipping up her suitcase. Tara was her name tag. She hovered close to the doorway, tinkering with her shirt hem. When Tara eventually said, "Can I ask you something?" Kendra looked around, her eyes pleasant yet steady. "Sure. How did you stay so calm? I mean, he was so aggressive, and you just handled it. Like, how?" Tara asked abruptly after hesitating. Kendra folded her arms and leaned on the bench. Her words, "It's not about staying calm. It's about knowing you can handle yourself. Fear loses its grip when you're prepared." Curious, Tara cocked her head. "So, you're trained? Like, military or something?" Kendra nodded slightly. "I served as a Navy SEAL for over a decade. I've faced worse situations than what happened out there." Tara's gaze expanded. "Wow. That explains a lot," Kendra said, "but it's not just about training," in a somber tone. "It's about understanding when to act and when to let things go." He wasn't just angry, he was insecure. People like that look for easy targets. When you show them you're not one, they don't know what to do. Slowly, as though taking in the significance of what Kendra had spoken, Tara nodded. "I wish I could be that brave." "You can," replied Kendra plainly. "Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing firm when it matters." The middle-aged woman who had previously checked on Kendra peeked in through the locker room door as Tara took in the counsel. Softly, "Sorry to interrupt," she murmured. "I just wanted to say thank you. You handled that with so much grace. Honestly, it made me think about how often I let people walk all over me." Kendra gave a little smile. Standing up for yourself isn't always easy, but it's necessary. Not just for you, but for everyone watching. With a serious gaze, the woman nodded. "You're right. I think I needed to see that." Kendra slung her purse across her shoulder. "We all need reminders sometimes." Kendra had a feeling of calm resolution as she left the locker area and into the refreshing evening air. Perhaps it was meant to be, but none of this had been part of her plan. Perhaps someone in the gym needed to witness what strength looked like, not strength in terms of physical prowess, but strength in terms of poise, fortitude, and a refusal to allow ignorance to triumph. She knew the narrative wasn't about her, though, even as she made her way to her car. It was about each person leaving that gym with a fresh outlook. Ingrained in their brains a lesson about bravery, respect, and the perils of assuming too much about someone. Even though the gym gradually filled up that night, the incident was still vivid in everyone's memories. The group of regulars was divided into conversations, with some repeating what they had witnessed and others reflecting on their own responses. Why had they been hesitant? How may they have handled it differently? Something more profound than shock had been triggered by the encounter. It had made individuals reevaluate their silence and their presumptions. After her shift, Tara sat at the counter and browsed through her phone, still disturbed yet motivated. The footage of Kendra's composed yet firm acts had already started making the rounds on the internet. Admiration, incredulity, and even some self-reflection were among the comments that poured in. She handled it like a pro. This is what strength looks like. Why did no one step in sooner? The incident was about what it revealed, not simply what had occurred. People undervalued others much too frequently, whether out of ignorance, bigotry, or conceit. Kendra had become a symbol of calm strength by skillfully and gracefully shattering such illusions. At home, Kendra sat drinking tea as her dog snuggled up at her feet. Messages from gym patrons buzzed through her phone, asking for guidance, complimenting her bravery, or expressing gratitude. Although she didn't consider herself a hero, she was grateful for the sentiment. Regardless of the size of the stage, she believed that standing steady in the face of injustice was more important than the limelight. She was as modest as ever when she went to the gym the next week. People now welcomed her in a new way, showing their respect by nodding and smiling. Tara timidly walked up to her and held her a card. "With a just wanted to say thanks," she said. "You've inspired me." Later, at home, Kendra opened the card. There was a little note inside. "You reminded me that strength comes in many forms. Thank you for showing me what it means to truly stand tall." Tara wasn't the only one who gained knowledge that day. All those who had seen the altercation, or simply heard about it, had learned their lesson. Respect is not bestowed lightly, it must be earned. Strength is about guts and determination, not about bulk or bluster. It's the silent act of remaining strong when everyone else expects you to give up. However, the man had completely vanished from the gym. No one knew if it was fear or embarrassment. Though not the effect he had hoped for, his actions had left a lasting impression that served as a sobering lesson of what happens when ignorance and resiliency collide. One idea jumped out to Kendra as she considered what had happened. Perhaps more heroes weren't needed in the world. Perhaps more individuals who were prepared to take a position and demand the respect they were due were simply needed. Tell someone who needs to be reminded of the value of courage, strength, and respect if this story touched you. Remember to subscribe for more thought-provoking, inspiring, and challenging stories that will stick with you long after the credits have rolled.